Hey guys, it's Drake Daglish from The Crooked Man, and I'm here to show you the stuff we did get filmed for episodes 2 through 4 of the Crooked Man series. So as I said in the last video, there are some stuff we shot for episodes 2 through 4, but we didn't get those episodes quite done. So for this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to narrate the parts that we didn't film while showing some of the gameplay of the Crooked Man game to help me guide along. And the stuff that we did film, I will then show us into the scene. If you want to rewatch episode 1 before watching this, you can do that. I'll leave a link down below. And let's get started. So for episode 2, we actually have the first scene filmed, so let's just play the intro and we'll stop when we stopped recording.
Sleep well last night? Sorry I had you sleep on the couch.
It's alright. Sorry for coming over so late.
I was surprised. Don't sweat it. So, did something happen?
No, everything's fine. Just felt like intruding on the newlyweds.
Really?
No, I'm kidding, dude.
Alright, but if something happens, tell me. Marion and I are here for you.
Okay. I'm glad to have a friend who looks out for his.
Oh, hey, I heard from Marion. Sorry about that Shirley thing. I told her off.
Don't worry about it. It's not Marion's fault.
Well, it's not about whose fault it is. I'm just not happy about it. But don't let that get to you, alright? I know you still have your mother, but I think it's time to go out and look for new people.
As if a guy like me could find a date. I'm just a clerk with a mom in the hospital, and the girl I wanted to marry ran away.
Dude, don't be such a sissy! Keep whining and you'll have your own rain cloud.
Well, I'll be careful. By the way, I'm taking a little trip. Don't want to waste my vacation days, you know?
Nice! Where are you going?
Just somewhere I saw in a pamphlet. I'll call you when I get there.
Sweet. Send me a postcard.
Breakfast is ready, Paul. David, will you be eating too?
No thanks. I'm not hungry. I should be going.
Alright, come by anytime you like.
Will do. A few hours later, David arrives at an abandoned hotel which has the address that he was given in the first episode. He decides to go investigate. After investigating for a while, David hears a noise behind him. He quickly turns around, and we meet Sissy. Sissy was going to be played by one of my great friends, Madeline Cooper, who you've probably seen over on the Creepypasta episodes and some of the other stuff I do. Sissy is a very shy girl. She came to the hotel because she left something there, a box. And she says she's not leaving till she finds it, so David says he'll help her find it. They split up. Later that night, David's still just walking around. He's starting to think of just giving up, so he ends up calling Paul. While talking on the phone mid-sentence, David turns around to see a small key on the ground. He ends up picking it up and decides to stay a little bit longer. The key is labeled basement key, so he goes to find the basement door in the lobby and heads down to the basement. When he enters the basement, he looks around in the pitch black with a flashlight. Suddenly, there's a man facing the wall, crying. David goes up to him, asking if he's alright. The man turns around, and it is revealed to be the Crooked Man. The Crooked Man is a very tall man who is missing an eye and has a big smile on his face. The Crooked Man was going to be played by another one of my friends, Zach Grisham, who you can also see on the Creepypasta episode Season 2. The Crooked Man roars at David, and David stumbles back. He tries to get out of the basement, but the Crooked Man grabs him. David ends up being able to kick himself free and escapes. On his way out, he bumps into Sissy and tells her it's not safe to stay here. There's a monster in the basement. Sissy says the basement wasn't open earlier and goes running down there because she wants to check for her box. David follows. Both of them re-enter the basement, and the Crooked Man is nowhere to be seen. David is begging Sissy to leave. He doesn't want her to be in danger, and he wants to get out of there because he's scared for his life as well. Sissy keeps refusing. David asks, why is it important? And Sissy replies, it was a gift from my boyfriend. David, being the gentleman he is, says, okay, we can look for it a bit longer. Later in the hotel, David is wandering around by himself again when he has another run-in with the Crooked Man. But this time, instead of facing him, David runs into a hotel room and hides under the bed, breathing heavily as his heart's beating out of his chest. The Crooked Man enters the room and stops at the foot of the bed. David passes out. A little later, David wakes up underneath the bed still. The Crooked Man is gone. He gets up from underneath the bed and goes to open the door of the room. David goes to open the door to leave the room, and on the other side of the door is Sissy. David screams out of panic, and so does Sissy. David realizes it's just Sissy, and he sighs. Then he notices her arm. Sissy is bleeding due to an injury. He brings her into the room and starts to take care of her wound. Sissy says she was paranoid about David's talk of a monster and tried to grab a knife, but slipped when she tried to grab it, and cut herself in the process. Sissy starts to question why she's here, why she's even looking for the stupid box. David's trying to reassure her, but then she comes clean that it was her ex-boyfriend who gave her the box. David asks why they broke up, and Sissy honestly doesn't know why. That's why she's here looking for the box. She needs some sort of closure. She ends up saying something that sticks with David. He always said he appreciated my kindness, but when we broke up, he said, it's all I had. Sissy decides she doesn't want to talk anymore, she just wants to rest. She lays down in the bed and decides to take a nap. David leaves the room. David closes the door behind him and leans on it. He starts to think.
Why are you always like this, David?
Like what?
You're always such a yes man. Just going with the flow? Don't you have a personality?
I don't mean to. I try to think for myself.
I don't see it that way. You're not kind, you're just indecisive. It would be the same with anybody but me, right? That's why I can't trust you.
Look, please just listen. I'm always thinking of you. If I'm a pain, then I'm sorry.
There you go again, thinking you can apologize and everything will be fine. You don't understand a word I'm saying.
Then what should I do? You can't trust me. Is that it?
It's hopeless for us. I hate for it to end this way, but it would just be an annoyance if we were to stay together any longer. Thanks for everything, David. Goodbye.
Still leaning on the door, he says, kindness is all you have. Later that night, David's wandering around the hotel some more. He finds a door that leads outside. David goes outside to see a nice fountain. He looks inside it, and he sees the box that Sissy has been looking for. It matches the description. He grabs the box out of the fountain and starts to examine it. Suddenly, we can hear a scream coming from the hotel. David realizes it's Sissy, and he goes running. David runs around the halls looking for Sissy in a panic, hoping he can get to her in time. David enters the ballroom to see Sissy has been cornered by the Crooked Man, who is slowly approaching her. David quickly runs in and pushes the Crooked Man aside. He gives Sissy the box and takes the knife from Sissy. He tells her to get out of here, and she does. David and the Crooked Man are at a standoff. David draws out his knife and charges the Crooked Man as the Crooked Man roars. Cut to black. Later at the front of the hotel, Sissy is sitting in front of the steps. David comes out of the door with a bloody knife. She hugs him, thanking God he's okay, and she asks what happened to the monster, and he says it's taken care of. Sissy starts to break down. Why she was helpless during the attack of the Crooked Man. Why she did nothing but scream and run, and also why she can't get over her boyfriend. She says she's such a wimp. David says, what's wrong with being a wimp? You may feel like a sissy for not being able to forget him, but is that such a bad thing? David goes on to talk about how Shirley left him, even though he was so sure they were going to get married, and how she also basically said, kindness is all you have, and it's okay to be a wimp and not be able to forget them. This cheers up Sissy. David asks about the box again, and Sissy says there's a small key that goes with it and she couldn't find it. Suddenly, David pulls out the key that he found on his porch in episode 1, and he gives it to her. It's a perfect fit. When they open it, it's a scrap of notebook paper with an address on it. David asks if Sissy recognizes it. She says she doesn't. David takes it as the next clue in his adventure and decides to go to that address. David offers Sissy a ride home, but she declines, saying she'd rather walk home, but they should get coffee sometime. David said can't wait. Sissy leaves. David looks at the paper one last time and walks towards the camera. Blackout. End of episode 2. The Crooked Man episode 3 starts out with David approaching an abandoned school. David enters the school and looks around the hallways. He can't see anything. Suddenly, someone goes running by a corner and David chases after him, telling him to wait up. After a bit more running, they both run around and they collide into each other, both falling over. David meets Dee. Dee was going to be played by another one of my good friends, Jeremy Snyder, who you can also see in the Creepypasta episode Season 2. After the collision, Dee proceeds to call David a shady punk and asks what you're doing in the school. After Dee sasses David a little bit more, Dee reveals that he was a graduate from the school and has come back to revisit old memories. Dee just says he's wandering around and tells David see you later. Later, David's wandering around the halls and sees a classroom door that's unlocked. He goes in and the door slams behind him. He panics a bit. He tries to open the door, but he can't. Suddenly we see a hand smack up against the glass of the door. David jumps back. The monster peeks his head through the window to see David. The Crooked Man is alive. David quickly runs behind one of the desks in the classroom. The Crooked Man busts in. The Crooked Man charges at David, but David uses the desks in the classroom to maneuver around the Crooked Man and runs out of the room. David quickly finds another classroom to hide in and ducks behind the teacher's desk. The Crooked Man enters looking for David. He slowly approaches the teacher's desk. Right before the Crooked Man can see David, he suddenly turns around and leaves the room. He takes a breather when he suddenly realizes Dee is still in the building as well. He hurries up and leaves the classroom, looking for Dee in a panic. David carefully makes his way through the halls, trying to avoid the Crooked Man, but trying to find Dee as fast as he can. David hears a noise coming from a classroom. He enters it and sees Dee listening to a tape.
Friends, faculty, and staff, I thank you for coming today. Today is, for us, the best day of our lives, because today we leave the nest of our school and begin our climb to adulthood. Those who pass the bar test, and those who didn't, those who will be clerks and notaries, maybe we should all take some time to, thank our teachers. We owe this school a great debt for what it has done to us, and some of us may still need to spend a little more time studying.
David asks what he's listening to. Dee says it was a speech someone gave at his graduation 3 years ago. He talks about how studying was wearing him out, so he came to this place to relax. David asks, why are you still studying if you graduated? Dee admits he never passed his bar exam, and he's on his 6th attempt right now. He says even though he's taken so long, he is not discouraged. He knows he'll get it thanks to the confidence from his professor. David goes on to tell him how the Crooked Man, a monster that he encountered, is here in the building and they both need to leave. Dee talks about how he's not going to take advice from a shady guy he just met and continues to wander around the building. After Dee leaves, David starts to think of how Dee was a lot like David when he was younger.
Hey, Paul, I got in.
Wait, really? You got into fight school? That's crazy, David. I feel like I can do a handstand. You can do whatever you put your mind to.
Thanks, but it doesn't make me a pilot yet. I still have to pass the exam.
Man, dude, that totally will be. And you should give me a ride sometime. I'd love to fly over the city sometime.
Dude, I'm not piloting passenger planes. It's not that kind of school.
Don't sweat the details. I'm happy for you. You did good. Hey, I'll take you to lunch today.
Sounds good.
Later that night, David is roaming the halls again, and he finds a scrap piece of paper on the ground and picks it up and reads it. He believes it's from the man who is waiting for him. After reading it, he folds it up and puts it in his pocket. Looking down the hall, he sees another open door and goes to it. Inside the classroom, there is another note he picks up and reads it. It's the same handwriting from the previous note. After reading it, David starts to get a headache. It becomes overwhelming. After a bit, it starts to go away. While he's recomposing himself, it is revealed that the Crooked Man is standing right behind him. David turns around and the Crooked Man suddenly grabs his throat, choking the life out of David. The monster strangles David until he passes out. Cut to black. Cut to David lying on the floor of the classroom later. He gasps for air as he wakes up. He looks around for the monster but is nowhere to be seen. Later, David is walking the halls again. He hears a noise coming from the classroom again. It sounds a lot like the tapes from earlier. David enters the classroom and sees a laptop sitting on the counter, playing a video.
Friends, faculty, and staff, I thank you for coming today. We're glad a sunny graduation to kick off the rest of our lives.
The future may be uncertain for some of us, but it is our persistence that will get us through these times. And to my fellow graduates, I offer you a round of applause, if you will. But even as valedictorian, there's something I still need to lament, and it is about David Hoover. He was highly skilled, highly admired by his teachers and pupils. We all expected that he would be standing here proudly with us today, but our hopes were dashed by none other than the man himself. Let me ask you all this. Should he be forgiven for his actions, for betraying his pupils and mentors? No, I didn't think so either. I think he should be forever punished for betraying all of us, for trying to complete his selfish little dream. You're the lowest of the low. What are you even good for? You're scum. You should just go off and die somewhere, coward.
Dee comes into the classroom asking what the hell is wrong with David. David just shrugs it off. Dee notices how David looks like crap and offers him a water bottle. David takes it. While talking, David asks Dee if he's seen a man his age around here. Dee says no and asks if that's the man David is looking for. David says yes. Dee says he'll help look. As Dee starts to leave, David warns him of the crooked man again. Dee shrugs it off like he thinks David's just crazy. David pleads for him to be careful, and Dee says, "It's okay, I have a knife." Later, David is wandering the halls again, looking for any sign of the man or the crooked man. He sees an open study with the name tag Professor Andrew. He goes inside and looks around. He sees an open note on the desk and decides to read it. Finally, I'm done with the finals. I'm glad everyone got the appropriate grades. Of course, there's that lone D. I teach him so much, but he doesn't even get the basics. He's lagging behind everyone else, and yet he's so intent on becoming a lawyer. That nickname D stands for Dreamer. Apparently that nickname was given to him for having such an impossible dream. If you ask me, it's for the grade he will always get. I hate how he fawns over me, too. I pragmatically have to act nice to him, and he always comes for lessons after school. I wish I'd never let him in my class. David is shocked by what Dee's professor had to say about him. He thinks about what would happen if Dee read the note and decides to hide it in his pocket. David exits the professor's study to see the crooked man walking down the hall. After the crooked man passes by, David goes to the classroom that he came from and sees Dee on the ground, unconscious. As David enters, the door closes behind him, and he goes up to Dee and shoves him, trying to wake him up. Dee wakes up claiming he has a head injury. David asks why it's getting hard to breathe in here, and Dee says it's because of the gas. There is a gas leak in the room. David hoists him up onto his shoulder and tries to get him out of the room, but the crooked man is now at the door. They need to find another way out. David puts Dee down and looks around the classroom. He sees a window. He tries to slide it open, but it won't. He grabs a desk and slams it through the window of the school. He quickly grabs Dee and they jump out the window. After they jump out, David quickly takes Dee to his car and lays him down to rest. David asks Dee if he wants to go to the hospital, but he says no, he's fine, but he owes David. David says he shouldn't have come here, and Dee tells him to shut up. David wants to bring up how Dee's been studying for 3 years to become a lawyer. Dee says he doesn't want to do anything else, and he's not going to give up. David talks about how he was going to flight school, and it was exactly the same way. Dee starts to think David is okay. David asks if he wants to get out of here now, if he's done reminiscing about old times. Dee says okay. As David starts to make his way to the car, he drops the paper out of the back of his pocket. Dee goes to pick it up and give it to David. Dee starts to read the note and realize it's from his Professor Andrew. He reads the full note and ends up furious. Dee storms off into the school. David chases after him, and Dee ends up stopping in a classroom. David follows in. Dee goes on a rant about how he's dumb, how he should have known that nobody ever believed in him. That's life, isn't it? David says maybe you weren't cut out to be a lawyer. David goes on to compare Dee to how he was when he was younger, and he wanted to become a pilot so badly. But he couldn't. David reveals that he is colorblind. David talks about how ever since he was a kid, all he wanted to do was be a pilot. He went to flight school because he wanted to do it. David talks about how he is colorblind, and because he cannot see a few colors, he was not allowed to be a pilot. To get into school, he faked his vision test results, and he played innocent for 3 years. He was found out during his pilot exam, and people in his class called him a filthy traitor. He goes on to talk about how he dropped out, and now he's just some clerk. David says it's okay if you still want to become a lawyer, just don't get trapped. Dee asks, wasn't it your childhood dream? David goes on to talk about how there are still things in life he enjoys, even though he wasn't able to accomplish his dream. Dee says all he wants to do is be a lawyer. He says he'll try the bar exam one more time, and if he doesn't pass, he'll give up. David and Dee start to head back to the car now. But before they can leave the classroom, the Crooked Man is right outside the door. The Crooked Man comes in and roars. David tells Dee to get out of the school, quickly. He'll take care of it. After a bit of a struggle, Dee says okay, but gives David his knife. David distracts the monster away from Dee, so Dee is able to escape from the classroom. David uses the tables around the classroom as a barrier to maneuver around the Crooked Man and takes small stabs at the Crooked Man. Eventually, while rounding one corner, the Crooked Man grabs David by the ankle and trips. He drops the knife. Crooked Man gets on top of David and starts to strangle him again. David tries to reach for the knife, but it's not quite in his reach. Finally, he's able to get a hold of the knife. Blackout, as we hear a stab and a roar from the Crooked Man. Later at the school entrance, Dee is pacing in front of the school. David comes out with Dee's knife, bloodied. Dee is relieved to see that David is still alive. Before they leave, Dee gives David a piece of paper having another address on it. Dee said he found it in the basement. He thought David dropped it too. While the paper has an address on it, it also says Place of Regret. He asks Dee if he knows what it means, but Dee has no clue. David offers Dee a ride home, but Dee refuses, says he wants to walk. But he says they should meet up for drinks sometime. Dee leaves, and so does David. End of episode 3. Episode 4. Now, for the people who've played the game, this is where things are going to get a little bit different. It's late at night, David is inside his car, he's asleep. He wakes up to hear a ringing. David isn't able to pick it up on time, though. He contemplates calling him back, but says, I'll call him later, and he gets out of the car. As David steps out of the car, he is in front of an old house. He knocks on the door, asking if anyone's home. Nobody responds, so he goes in. David enters the house and looks around. As he walks through the house, there is a huge cabinet. Inside, visibly, is a gun. Right before he enters one of the rooms, he hears a woman crying from the other room. He quickly enters the next room in the house. Wait. This is my mom's living room. How did I get here?
Davy? Is that my Davy boy?
Mom?
Davy, why did you abandon me?
What? How can you be here?
I hate being trapped at home. You're my family. You leave me here?
No, you were sick, Mom, so
you left me. My own family couldn't stand me anymore.
No, you're wrong.
My own son, leaving me with a bunch of strangers because he can't stand me.
Shut up! Who are you? My mother couldn't possibly be here. Why are you pretending to be her?
It hurts, Davy. Just like it did then. Are you going to try and kill me again, Davy? It hurts so much, Davy.
Ah!
my house? What did you do with my husband? Answer me!
Mom, please stop. You just keep saying things like that. Dad just went out, okay? Did you forget?
Shut up, intruder! I don't know anyone like you. If you don't leave, I'll call the police!
Stop! Don't tell me you're already going senile. Please take a rest for today. I'm tired from work. Just tell me if I'm a bother.
Shut up! You keep your mouth shut! Do you think I know you? Get out of here!
Stop! What are you saying? Did I do something wrong? Just tell me if I did something wrong. Are you teasing me? 'Cause it's not funny. Please. Mom.
Quiet! I am not your mother! I don't know you! Get out!
Enough! David! Hey! What are you doing? Are you trying to kill her? David!
It appears to be a brain tumor. It's putting a lot of pressure on her brain. Sudden changes in behavior, violent action, and memory loss can all be signs of brain illness. It's not your fault, David. You didn't know. In some cases, counseling to resolve friction in a family can uncover an illness. It's sad to say, but this kind of thing happens all the time. If we had noticed a little sooner... Back to the topic of your mother. She appears to be very weak. We'll have to postpone the surgery. We will set up a nursing area at her home to try and trigger some memories. We will try to make her better as soon as possible. Please visit her often. Even if she doesn't remember you, she is family.
This is David Hoover. Leave a message.
Damn it, David! He's not answering his phone, and he's not here. What the hell could he be doing, and where the hell is he?
Paul, what do we do? I knew we shouldn't have left him alone.
Calm down, Marianne.
How can I be calm about this? David's been through a lot. His mother, Shirley. I've always been afraid for him. I thought he would do something stupid that he can't come back from.
I even suggested moving, and look where that got us.
It wasn't a bad idea of mine. It was just a mistake picking that place.
What are you talking about?
I'll just call him again. If he doesn't answer, I'll call the police.
What do you mean? Why would the house... Ugh, don't tell me ghost stories at a time like this. Always talking about how you see things and...
David? David, where are you?
1414 Applewood.
What? Why the hell are you all the way over there? Listen, I'm gonna come and get you. Don't move.
Don't come. Please, don't. Leave me alone.
David? Hey, David! Damn. Alright, we can get there in a few hours if we're speeding on right through. Come on, let's go.
We see Paul's car driving by. Him and Marianne are on the road heading to the address David told them he was at. As Paul's driving, he sees a girl. He pulls over and asks if she wants a ride. She says she would very much love one. It is revealed that the girl is Sissy. They continue to the drive. Paul talks to Sissy as he's driving, and Marianne sometimes budges in trying to talk to Paul. Eventually, Paul sees a man on the road too who's walking. He's thinking of passing him, but Sissy says stop the car and pick him up. Paul does. They let him in. It's Dee. Paul explains to Dee and Sissy what they're doing, that they're going after David because they want to help their friend. They both say, he needs your help, and we're counting on you. Marianne finally gets Paul's attention. Paul says, what? Marianne says, who are you talking to? David quickly turns around to see that Dee and Sissy are not there. Paul is very confused, but they arrive at the house. As they park, Paul realizes something, but he won't explain it to Marianne. He tells Marianne to wait in the car. Marianne's hesitant about it, but Paul convinces her to. She says, please, bring David back. Paul says, I will. He exits the car. Paul gets out of the car and sees the house. He enters. He passes by the cabinet that David passed by earlier. The gun that was visible in the cabinet is no longer there. He enters the bedroom and sees a note on the floor. He picks up and reads the note.
There once was a crooked man who walked a crooked mile. He found a crooked sixpence against a crooked stile. He bought a crooked cat which caught a crooked mouse, and they all lived together in a little crooked house. Then he had a crooked thought. Why is crookedness my lot? Why must I be crooked, instead of being not? So the crooked man would cry, and he couldn't fathom why. And so
A noise is made off camera. Paul gets up to follow it. Paul enters a living room. Paul goes into the doorway that David entered earlier. When he enters, it's just a normal living room. Paul sees David facing the wall. He calls out to David. David asks why he's here. Paul says he came to get him, and he's not leaving without him. David says to forget about him and just to leave him alone. Paul tries to reach out to David, but David says stay away. David is pointing the gun that was missing in the cabinet at his own head. David goes on to talk about how he's hopeless and how he's not happy, that he is a crooked man. It is then revealed that the crooked man is behind David, and he is the one manipulating David to hold the gun to his head. Right before David can pull the trigger, Paul runs up to David and punches him. Paul shouts, "You damn monster, get away from David," and continues to punch David. As Paul continues to hit David, David starts to snap out of it. David kicks Paul off him, saying, "Stop, that hurts, you moron." Paul is relieved that David is finally back. Paul then demands an explanation for what's going on. Cut to outside the house later. David and Paul are sharing a smoke. David has explained the whole story, everything that happened up till now, to Paul. Paul says how he met Sissy and Dee on the way up here. David said that's impossible. We're far away from the places I met them. Paul says, "Listen, David, people's consciousness, they sort of stick around in places." David says, "Not more of your occult shtick." Paul ridicules David for making fun of the occult after David has endured everything the crooked man has brought to him. Paul says, "Just listen and no jokes. So you've had it pretty similar to the guy who used to live in your home, right? Shattered dreams, breakup, family troubles. When I first looked at the place, it was fine. But when you moved in, I had a strange feeling. From you and from the house. I have to guess that the guy's consciousness and you had a perfect match. Has to be why you wanted to meet the guy, too. So you're saying he's calling to me?" "Yep. And you're unconsciously responding. Some people are soft-hearted to the core and always sympathize with others. And they get taken advantage of most." "Taken advantage of? Look, don't I barely know him? You know a little from the stuff he left. Plus, that was all the stuff you could identify with. So what would you think of the guy who is the spitting image of you? Would you hate him or like him?" "I don't know." "I'm guessing both. Same as him. Think back. The crooked man tried to kill you, tried to drag you with him, but there was also people who relied on you, people who needed your help. He hated you, but he liked you. He thought you could share in suffering. He thought he could share in suffering with you. So he was seeking your help. And that's why you met those people. That's what I'm thinking. Honestly, I'm not sure if it's right. It's not quite right. He wasn't seeking my help. He helped me get back on my feet. Again, that's you and him being similar." After this conversation, David reaches into his pocket and finds another scrap of paper. It's another address that is not far from this location. David stands up and says he's going to meet him, whoever he is. Paul says you could always not. What if something happens? David says if he doesn't do this, the crooked man might follow him forever. David says if he doesn't do this, the crooked man might follow him forever. So he's going. Paul says, "You better come back. I don't want to go to my best friend's funeral." David thanks Paul, and they leave. Paul and David make their way to Marion. David quickly hugs Marion and goes to his car. Marion asks where David is going. Paul says he needs to finish what he started. that's the end of episode 4. Obviously, the scenes I was just reading and having gameplay over, I was just summarizing. There's more like detail to characters and stuff, which is why I will also be uploading the scripts if you want to read those as well, which I highly recommend you do. They will be on Google Drive, and the links will be down in the description below. The next video that will be out is the bloopers for episodes 2 through 4 of the stuff that we did film, and the video after that will be the Crooked Man episode 5, and the video after that will be the bloopers for Crooked Man episode 5. And that'll be it. So, thank you guys again, and I will catch you in the next video.